The ice cracked at 20 paces upstream from where Marcus Vance was standing on the bank with his fishing axe in his hand. He heard the crack first, the long, groaning fracture of river ice in late winter, and then he saw the figure go through. The figure had been walking along the ice from the far bank, carrying something dark in her arms, moving with the careful weight-distributed steps of a person who knew that ice in late winter was a thing that could betray you. The careful steps had not been enough. Marcus dropped the axe. He ran along the bank because the bank was solid and the ice was not, and he ran until he was directly across from the place where she had gone through, and then he went out onto the ice himself, because there was no other option. He was 39 years old, lean and tall, with dark hair beginning to gray at the temples, a short brown beard, and the calloused hands of a man who had been working a hill farm alone for 11 years. He was wearing his heavy winter coat and his felt-lined boots, neither of which would help him if the ice gave under him too. But he weighed less than a draft horse, and the ice had held a draft horse 2 weeks ago when he had crossed it himself, and he calculated this in the half-second it took him to step off the bank, because the figure in the water was already going under for the second time. The water was so cold it was not water, it was something else. He went into his waist, trying to grab her on the first reach, and missed. He went into his shoulders on the second reach and caught the dark fabric of her coat. He pulled. She was heavier than he had expected. The dark thing she had been carrying was a child, perhaps 2 years old, wrapped in furs, and the child was now floating face down between them. Marcus grabbed the child first because the child was the one who would die first. He pulled the small body up onto the ice. The child was breathing in the small, ragged way of a child who had been underwater for less time than Marcus had feared. Marcus put the child down on the ice in a position where the small face was clear of the water and went back for the woman. She had not gone fully under the second time because she had grabbed the edge of the broken ice with one hand, but her grip was failing and her eyes were closing. Marcus got both his hands under her arms and pulled. She came up onto the ice slowly, and then all at once. He dragged her and the child along the ice the 8 feet to the bank, and then up the bank, and he did not stop dragging until they were 40 feet from the river in the snow at the base of a tall pine tree, because 40 feet was the distance he had decided in his head was no longer the river. The woman was Orc. He saw it now in the daylight. Her skin was the deep moss green of the river clans, and her hair was the color of wet black ink, and her face was beautiful and very young, perhaps 24, and her eyes were closed. She was not breathing. The child was breathing in small, ragged gasps, but the woman was not. Marcus had been in the army for 6 years before he had bought the hill farm. He had pulled men out of rivers before. He knew what to do when a person was not breathing because of cold water. He turned her on her side. He cleared her mouth. He pressed on her chest in the rhythm he had been taught at a winter camp on the eastern frontier 16 years ago. He pressed and counted and pressed and counted. After 12 presses, she coughed water. After 15, she coughed more water. After 18, she gasped. Her chest moved on its own. She was breathing. Marcus checked the child. The child was warmer than the mother, which was strange, until Marcus understood that the mother had been holding the child up out of the water with both arms even after she had been going under herself, and that the child had been wrapped in furs that had insulated her in the moment she had been submerged. The child was small and green and alive. Marcus took off his heavy winter coat and wrapped it around both of them, mother and child together. He picked them up. They were not heavy together. He carried them. The farm was a quarter of a mile up the slope from the river. Marcus walked the quarter mile in the snow in his shirt sleeves and his felt-lined boots, with an unconscious orc woman and a barely conscious orc child in his arms, and by the time he reached the farmhouse door, his hands had stopped shaking from cold and started shaking from the simple, muscular exhaustion of carrying weight he had not been prepared to carry. He kicked the door open because he had no free hands. He carried them both into the kitchen, set them down on the rug in front of the cast-iron stove, and added wood to the fire. He stripped off the woman's wet outer coat. He stripped off the child's wet furs. He left them in their underclothes because he was a man who did not undress strangers further than necessary. He covered them both with 3 wool blankets from the chest by the bed. He poured warm water into a tin basin and bathed their faces and hands gently to bring color back. The child began to cry. The crying was a good sign. Marcus heated milk and honey on the stove and gave the child a small spoonful of the warm, sweet liquid, and the child swallowed and stopped crying and looked at him with wide, dark eyes the same color as her mother's hair. The woman was still unconscious, but she was breathing steadily, and her color was returning. Marcus sat by the stove and watched them. He did not know who they were. He did not know where they had come from. He did not know why a young orc mother and her 2-year-old child had been walking across river ice in late winter. He did not know what would happen when the woman woke up. He knew only that the woman would wake up because he had pulled her from the water in time, and that the child would live because the mother had held her up. Those were the things that had happened in the last hour, and the rest could wait. The woman woke at sunset. She woke the way a person wakes from a near drowning, which is to say slowly and in stages, and with confusion. She opened her eyes. She looked at the ceiling of a farmhouse she had never seen. She looked at the small green hand of her child resting against her own chest beneath the blankets. She looked at Marcus, who was sitting in a wooden chair beside the rug with a tin cup of tea in his hands and an expression he hoped was reassuring. She did not speak immediately. She studied the room. She studied the child. She studied Marcus. After perhaps a minute, she spoke in careful common. "Who are you?" "Marcus Vance. This is my farm. I pulled you and the child out of the river 2 hours ago. The child is fine. She has eaten a little warm milk. You have been unconscious. You are safe here." She processed this. She looked at the child, who was now sleeping against her side with one small green hand curled into her mother's hair. The woman's face did something complicated. "She is alive." "Yes." "I thought she was gone. I went under, and I let go of her because I could not hold her up any more. She floated. Her furs kept her warm enough. I pulled her out first. She is fine." The woman closed her eyes. A single tear ran down her temple and into her hair. She did not make a sound. After a moment, she opened her eyes again. "My name is Leora. The child is Sail. She is my daughter." "Where were you going across the ice, Leora?" Leora was silent for a long time. Then she said, "There are men 2 days east of here who are hunting me. They want my daughter back. Her father is dead, and his clan has decided that she belongs to them and not to me. I do not agree. I left their settlement 6 days ago and have been walking west to reach my own clan's lands. The river was the shortest way. The ice was thinner than I thought. Marcus took this in. How far is your clan? 3 more days' walk, northwest, the Moonbright clan in the high meadows. And the men hunting you? A day behind me when I crossed the river, maybe less. They are good trackers. They will find the place where I went on to the ice. They will see that nobody came out on the other side. They will look downstream. When they find no body, they will look upstream. When they find no body upstream either, they will start checking farms within a half-day's walk of the river. Your farm is within half a day of the river. How many men? 6, armed. The leader is named Vorik. He was my husband's cousin. He believes that as the senior male relative of my dead husband, he has the right to take my daughter and raise her in my husband's clan. By their custom, he is correct. By my custom, he is not. I left because I would not give her to him. Marcus thought about this. He thought about the 6 armed orc men who would arrive at his farm sometime in the next 4 days. He thought about his single hunting rifle in the rack above the door and the limited usefulness of 1 rifle against 6. He thought about Leora, who had walked 6 days through winter country with a 2-year-old child to reach her own people, and who had gone through the ice and almost died, and who was now lying on his rug under 3 wool blankets, calculating how long it would take Vorik to find her. How long until you can walk again? If I rest tonight, I can walk in the morning, maybe slowly for the first day. 3 days walk to your clan's lands. Yes. If we leave tomorrow morning, we have at most a day's lead on Vorik before he finds the farm. Yes. I will go with you. Leora looked at him. Why? Because I have a horse and a sled, and the snow is firm enough for a sled. With the sled, we can travel 3 times faster than you can walk carrying a child. We can be at your clan's lands in a day and a half. Vorik on foot will not catch us if we leave at dawn. I cannot ask you to take that risk. You did not ask. I offered. Leora studied him for a long moment with her dark eyes. Then she said, Why? Because I pulled you out of a river 2 hours ago, and I did not pull you out so that Vorik could find you in my barn 3 days from now. Because I have lived alone on this farm for 11 years, and I do not have many days that mean something, and today's going to be one of them, whether I like it or not. Because some questions do not have good answers, and the right thing to do does not need them. Leora closed her eyes. After a moment, she nodded. Thank you, Marcus Vance. They left at dawn the next morning. Marcus had spent the night packing the sled. He had loaded blankets, dried meat, hard bread, a small kettle, his rifle, ammunition, a hatchet, 2 oil lanterns, a small clay jar of warm milk for sale that he had wrapped in straw to keep warm, and a folded canvas tarp in case they had to make camp. He hitched his draft horse, a heavy, patient gray gelding named Weather, to the sled. Leora and Sael lay in the bed of the sled wrapped in blankets, the child against her mother's chest. Marcus walked beside the sled at first to keep Weather at the right pace, and then climbed onto the bench when the going was smooth. The first day they made 28 miles. Weather was slow but steady, and the snow was firm, and the sled ran well. They camped at sundown in a stand of pines beside a small frozen creek. Marcus made a small fire. He warmed the milk for Sael. He made tea for Leora and himself. Sael, who had spoken only a few words since they had set out, sat in her mother's lap, watching the fire with the absolute attention small children gave to flames. After Sael fell asleep, Leora said quietly, "You have been kind to us. I have done what was needed." Not the same thing. Marcus looked at her across the fire. "Tell me about Vorik." Leora told him. Vorik was a man of perhaps 35, ambitious, intelligent, cold. He had positioned himself within his clan as the natural successor to Leora's husband Tobian, who had been a clan elder and a respected leader. When Tobian had died of a wasting illness 6 months ago, Vorik had moved quickly. He had argued at council that Sael, as Tobian's only child, should be raised in Tobian's clan rather than fostered to Leora's clan as Leora had requested. The council had narrowly agreed with Vorik. Leora had not. She had taken Sael and walked. She had been planning the route for months because she had seen the council vote coming. The route went north along a river that froze hard in winter, then east through a pass, then northwest through the meadows to the moon-bright lands where her own family lived. It would have worked if the late winter ice had been thicker. Marcus listened. When she was done, he said, "Vorik will be at your clan's lands a day after we are." "Yes, and he will demand Sael back." "He will demand it from my clan elders. They will refuse. He will threaten. They will refuse harder. He will ride home and bring his own warriors back and try to take her by force." "Will your clan defend her?" "Yes." "Will it be a war?" "It might be. Vorik does not want a war, but he wants his nephew's daughter more, and the calculation might run that way for him." Marcus thought about this. He thought about it for a long time, watching the fire. Then he said, "I have an idea. It depends on whether Vorik will speak to me. He might. He is a politician. Politicians speak to anyone who might be useful. Then tomorrow, when we reach your clan, I would like to ride back east and meet him on the road and offer him a proposition before he reaches the moonbright settlement." Leora looked at him with the careful expression of someone who suspected she was about to hear something she would not like. "What proposition?" "Sael was in a river. She nearly died. Her mother nearly died. The fact that they did not die is a debt to the river in many of the clan traditions I have heard about. The debt is paid by an offering or a service. Vorik is a politician. He cares about appearances within his clan. If I tell him publicly that the river spared his nephew's daughter on the condition that she be raised by her mother in her mother's clan, and that I am the witness to this, and that my testimony as a human who pulled her from the ice can be sworn before any clan council that wishes to hear it, then Vorik has a way to back down without losing standing. He says the spirits demanded it. He says the river chose. He returns to his clan and tells them he yielded to the will of the water. He does not look weak. He looks pious." Leora was silent for a moment. Then she said, "You have learned a great deal about clan tradition for a man who has lived alone on a hill farm for 11 years. I served on the eastern frontier for 6 years. I lived with mixed companies. I learned. Will Vorik accept it? Probably not the first time, but he will think about it. And if your clan elders publicly affirm the river's claim before he arrives, he will have less ground to refuse. The whole thing depends on us getting there first, and on your elders being willing to play the part." "They will be willing. They have known of Vorik for years. They will help arrange it." They reached the moon-bright lands at sundown the next day. Leora's clan, when they understood what had happened, gathered around the sled with such quiet emotion that Marcus felt himself an intruder on a thing he had no right to witness. An old woman with hair the color of fresh snow took sail from her mother's arms and held the child against her chest and did not let her go for an hour. Leora was helped into the longhouse. Marcus was given a place to stand. The clan elders, 3 women and 2 men, listened to Marcus's plan in the longhouse that night. They listened carefully. When he was done, the oldest of them, a woman named Mara, who had been first elder for 22 years, looked at Marcus for a long moment and said, "You understand our customs better than most of our young people do these days. I learned from a man named Talvor of the Stoneheart clan, who served beside me on the eastern frontier. He was a good teacher." Talvor of the Stoneheart. Yes, we knew him. He died 8 years ago at the Battle of Hethron's Pass. I know. I was beside him when he died. Mara nodded slowly. Then you are not a stranger to us. You are a friend of the clans. We will do as you say. The river has spoken. Marcus rode back east at dawn the next day. He rode alone on weather. He met Vorik and his 5 warriors on the road 2 hours' ride from the moonbright lands. Vorik was a tall man, with the dark green skin of his clan and the careful, watchful eyes of a man who had spent his life calculating angles. He stopped his horse when Marcus held up his open right hand in the formal sign for parley. He listened to Marcus for 3 full minutes without speaking. When Marcus finished, Vorik looked at him. "You are saying the river chose. I am saying the child went into the river and came out of it. I pulled her out. The mother went into the river and came out of it. I pulled her out also. I am the human witness. The Moonbright elders have already spoken on the matter. They affirm the river's claim. If you wish to dispute it, you will be disputing the river itself, in front of 3 clan witnesses, including your own scouts, who saw the broken ice. I do not think this is the dispute you want to have publicly." Vorik was silent for a long time. He looked past Marcus at the road behind him. He looked at his 5 warriors. He looked back at Marcus. "If I withdraw with the river's blessing on the boy. You withdraw with the river's blessing on you. The boy and her mother are within the river's protection. You honor the river by yielding. Your clan will respect this." "And the human who pulled her out, what does he want?" "Nothing. I am the witness. I claim no part in the daughter or the mother. I rode east to give you a way to honor the spirits without losing your standing. That is all I have come for." Vorik looked at him for a long time. He understood what was being offered. He was not a stupid man. He understood that Marcus was offering him a graceful exit from a problem that was about to become uglier than he had calculated. He nodded slowly. "I will withdraw. The river has spoken. I will say so to my clan." "Thank you, Vorik of the Riverstone clan." "Thank you, Marcus Vance of the Hill Farm." Vorik turned his horse. His warriors turned with him. They rode east and did not look back. Marcus rode west to the Moonbright lands. He arrived at the clan settlement in the afternoon. Leora met him at the edge of the settlement. She had sail on her hip. Both of them looked stronger than they had looked the night before. Leora looked at him. She did not speak immediately. Then she said, "He yielded. He yielded, on the river's word. On the river's word, witnessed by a human who pulled you out." "Yes." Leora closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were wet, but her face was calm. "Come into the longhouse. The elders want to thank you formally. You will not be allowed to leave for at least 3 days. There will be feasting." I have not been to a feast in 11 years. Then you are overdue, Marcus Vance. Marcus stayed in the Moonbright Lands for 4 days. He was given a place of honor at 3 meals. He was sworn as a friend of the clan, which was a status that came with a small carved bone token he was given to wear on a leather cord around his neck. He spent an afternoon teaching 3 of the clan's children the small trick of carving a whistle from a willow branch, which was something his own father had taught him when he had been the same age. He sat with Leora on the second evening, and she told him about her late husband, Tobian, who had been a good man and a difficult man, and whom she had loved without ever entirely understanding. And Marcus told her about his late wife, Hattie, who had died 6 years ago of the same wasting illness. And they sat together in the longhouse without it being anything more than 2 people sharing what they had carried for a long time. On the morning of the 5th day, Marcus rode home. He arrived at his hill farm by sundown. The fire in the cast-iron stove had gone out 4 days earlier, and the kitchen was cold, and the cup of tea he had left on the small table was frozen in the cup. He built a new fire, he warmed water, he sat at the table and looked at the rug in front of the stove where Leora and Sael had lain 4 days ago. And he thought about the river and the ice and the long ride west on a sled and the conversation with Vorik on the road. He had pulled an orc and her child out of a frozen river 5 days ago. He had ridden across the high country and back. He had become, in the span of less than a week, a friend of a clan he had not known existed when he had walked down to the river to chip ice for his fishing line. The bone token was around his neck. He could feel it. Spring came 2 months later. The river thawed. The road from the high meadows opened. On the 3rd week of spring, a moonbright trader passed through Marcus's farm with a small cart of goods and a sealed letter from Leora. The letter said that she and Sael were well, that the clan had prospered through the winter, that Vorik had not made any further trouble, that the council had begun discussions about formalizing trade relations with several human farms in the lower valleys, and that if Marcus would consider it, the clan would welcome him as a trade liaison between themselves and the human settlements he knew. The letter said this was not a request born of obligation. It was an offer of work that the clan elders had decided he was uniquely suited for. Marcus thought about this for 2 days. Then he wrote back, yes. The first year of Marcus's work as trade liaison brought changes to his hill farm that he had not anticipated. The Moonbright clan sent traders through twice a month carrying small goods to be exchanged with the human valleys, and Marcus's farm became the meeting point. He built a small trade shed beside the barn in the spring with a wooden counter and shelves and a pair of locked chests for valuables. He learned to keep a small ledger of trades. He learned the names of the regular traders from both sides. He learned which human farmers in the lower valleys would deal honestly with orcs and which would cheat them and which would refuse to deal with them at all, and he steered the trade accordingly. He turned away 3 offers from human merchants who wanted to take over the trade route entirely on the grounds that an orc clan should not be making its own commercial decisions. And after the 3rd offer, the merchant stopped trying because Marcus was not the kind of man who could be persuaded by money he had not asked for. The work was not large, but it was steady. The Moonbright trade brought small things, embroidered cloth, dried mountain herbs, carved wooden objects, smoked meats from animals that did not exist in the lower valleys. The human valleys traded back salt, iron tools, glass jars, sometimes books in the human script that the clan elders had begun to want for their growing collection. The exchanges were modest in volume, but the clan made a small, steady profit on each trade, and Marcus took a small, honest commission, and over the course of the first year his income tripled and his loneliness halved. Leora came down twice that year. The first visit was in early summer, when she rode down with a small group of clan traders to introduce Marcus to two of the elders he had not met during his stay in the longhouse. She brought Sael, who was now nearly 3 years old, and who had remembered Marcus despite the months between visits, and who had walked up to him on her small green legs and put her arms around his knee and said in careful common, "I remember the warm milk." Marcus had picked her up and held her and not said anything for a moment, because there was nothing to say. The second visit was in autumn. Leora came alone that time. She stayed 3 days. She helped Marcus repair the south wall of his barn, which had needed attention for 2 years and which Marcus had been postponing because there was nobody to hold the boards in place while he nailed them. She slept in the spare room in the farmhouse with the bolt on the inside of the door, which Marcus had installed without asking, and which she had used the first 2 nights and not the third. They did not speak about anything more than the work and the weather and the trade, but on the morning of the 4th day before she rode home, she stood beside Weather in the yard and said quietly, "I will come again. Come whenever you want. I want." That was all that was said. The second year of the trade liaison work brought a new development. Vorik, who had withdrawn from his claim on sale 2 years earlier on the river's word, sent a private message through the trade channels that he wished to speak with Marcus on a matter unrelated to the original dispute. Marcus, after consulting Leora and the elders, agreed to meet him at a neutral location halfway between the 2 clans' lands. Vorik arrived alone. He sat across from Marcus at a small fire in a cold spring morning. He spoke for a full hour about the changes in his own clan since the river had spoken, about the way the public account of the river's choice had changed how the younger orcs in his clan thought about claims and customs, and about the slow opening of his own thinking on certain matters that he had not been ready to think about before. He did not apologize. He did not need to. He had simply come to tell Marcus that he had been wrong about the daughter, and that the river had not been the one who had been right, but the woman who had walked across the ice carrying her child, and that he was now telling Marcus this in person because Marcus had given him the gift of an exit, and he had not properly thanked Marcus for that gift before. Marcus listened. When Vorik was done, Marcus poured him another cup of tea. They drank in silence for a while. Then Marcus said, "What you have just said is the kind of thing a man only says once. I will not repeat it. I will only thank you for saying it." Vorik nodded. He stood. He mounted his horse. He rode east. Marcus rode west. The trade between the 2 clans began the following month. Vorik's clan, the Riverstone, had different goods than the Moonbright, and the trade through Marcus's hill farm doubled within the year. Marcus built a second trade shed. He hired a young human helper from the village down the valley, a quiet boy named Sibran, whose father had died and whose mother needed the income. Sibran learned the trade routes. Sibran learned the names. Sibran would, Marcus thought, be running the trade himself within a few years, and that was the way these things were supposed to go, the way work passed from one set of hands to the next, the way a hill farm became something different from what it had been when Marcus had bought it 11 years ago. By the third year, Leora had come down to the farm 7 times. She had stayed for a week each time after the first 3 visits. The bolt on the inside of the spare room door had not been used in the last 4 visits. Sael called Marcus by his name now, and not by anything more particular than that. But she sat in his lap when he read aloud in the evenings, which was something the children of the Moonbright clan did with elders they trusted, and which Marcus understood without being told. The lesson was not in the moment when the ice cracked 20 paces upstream from where he was standing on the bank. It was not in the dragging of 2 cold bodies out of black water and up onto the snow. It was in the conversation by the fire on the first night of the sled ride west, where a woman who had nearly drowned told a man she had met that morning the precise political situation that would arrive at his farm in 4 days. And the man listened. It was in the willingness to sit by the fire with someone you had pulled out of a river and to plan with her, instead of for her, as though she had been the one with the plan and you had been the one with the horse, which was the truth of it. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is to be the means by which someone else's plan succeeds, to be the horse, to be the sled, to be the witness who can swear before any clan council that the river chose, to be the man who rides east at dawn to meet the cousin on the road with an offer that lets him save his face while he loses his claim. Sometimes the rescue is not the moment you pull the person out of the water. It is the 4 days of work that come after. Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe to the channel to watch more stories like this one. Leave a like. It helps the channel a lot. And drop a comment down below. I always read them and use your feedback to make our content better. Thanks so much. The Orc Keeper.